For the second part of World War II, we're going to look at essential statements 35 to 38. Here are our essential statements for this portion. We're going to take a look at Mussolini, how Hitler came to power, Germany under Nazi rule, and then finally we'll finish this unit out talking about the Holocaust, how it began, continued, and eventually will come to an end. So ES 35, explain how Mussolini came to power and ruled Italy. Okay? After World War I, Italy was a mess. Okay? They were that country that kind of switched sides partway through the war. They attended the Treaty of Versailles and that peace conference, but didn't get what they wanted out of it. And so here we see the former prime minister. Okay, he attended the Treaty of Versailles, was upset, this isn't fair that we're not getting anything out of the treaty that we wanted. And so eventually, like we talked about, is he is going to leave the treaty and then go so far as actually quit being the prime minister. And so some of the issues that we're going to see faced in Italy after the war is unemployment. Okay, we'll see strikes because of unemployment. We'll want better worker rights for those that do have a job, and we're going to see an increase in taxes. Okay, not anything that really should go together. I mean, you can't have higher taxes if people don't have a job. Enter Benito Mussolini. Okay, Mussolini was a former soldier during the war, and so it was kind of somebody that people sympathized with. Hey, he fought for us. And so he's going to come and tell the people, we're going to solve, and I'm going to solve all of your problems. And I'm going to return Italy to the glory of Rome. Because at one time, Italy was under control of the Roman Empire, and they were a huge, glorious empire that ruled throughout Europe and even parts into Africa. And so he tells people, I'm going to solve your problems, I'm going to return us to the glory that was once Rome. And so what we'll see happen is he's going to be now appointed the prime minister by the king. Okay, the king is very intimidated by this guy, and so he figures, hey, I'm going to keep my enemies closer, and so what better way to do that than let's put him as the prime minister. Okay, and so Mussolini will be the prime minister from 1922 until 1943, and after that point, in 1943, we'll see him set up and become the sole ruler of Italy. And so Mussolini is going to help set up what we call a fascist type system. And so we see fascist Italy. And some of those components of fascism, extreme nationalism, okay, extreme pride within their country. And part of that having to deal with, hey, let's return us to the Roman Empire. We are all Italians. We're strong Italians. Let's expand our territory. Okay, let's push our country to be bigger and better. We also see totalitarianism, which is total control of the entire nation by the government. And so just like what we saw a little bit with Stalin, he's going to use propaganda not only to push how good he is, but also to infiltrate the schools and to put in the schools and get rid of any ideas that go against them. And so here's just a little example of propaganda within from Benito Mussolini. So that's in Italian there. And then in English, Benito Mussolini loves many children. The children of Italy are very fond of El Duce is the leader. And then long live the leader. The third thing that we're going to see set up in a fascist type system is what we call a mixed economy. Okay, in a command type economy, we'll see the public, which is really the government that owns really everything. You see that a lot with communism. Okay, and a market type economy, it's kind of the sole ownership of the people. Everybody controls every little, business out there. But what we see instead set up is a mixed economy. And this is very similar to what we have within our own country as well, where we see a little bit of public, a little bit of private ownership. And also what we'll see happen is that's going to help solve our unemployment, okay? Because what we see, and I mentioned this in class, was awarding women to go home. And so here you can see this woman, hey, let's go encourage her to go home. Let's award her for having large families and give her lots of money. And so this is why a lot of times you see very large Italian families. It traces itself back to this system set up in fascist Italy. And the fourth thing that we see established in a fascist type system is action, which means supporting violence to get rid of anybody that's deemed weaker, whether that's a weaker race or somebody who is just not a strong Italian. And so Benito Mussolini is going to use his black shirts to put critics into prison or to kill anybody who opposes him. That should sound very familiar to what we talked about with Stalin, as well as what we're going to talk about with Hitler. So again, ES-35, we're talking about how Mussolini is going to get into power and then how he's going to set up a fascist government with the four components: nationalism, totalitarianism, having a a mixed economy, and then finally action, instilling violence, instilling fear within the Italian people. And so what we'll see also happen with Mussolini, he's the guy here on the right, he will ally with Hitler until Mussolini will be killed. So he is going to help form what we call the Axis powers. So when World War II breaks out, these are the sides that we'll see. The Axis powers are mainly composed of Germany, Japan, and Italy. And then our allied powers, again, over here on the left, we'll see France, Great Britain are kind of the big strongholds, when we'll see the United States and then Russia join later on. ES-36, discuss how Hitler rose to power in Germany. Okay, he is not even a German. He was actually born in the country of Austria. There is talk out there that he was actually rejected from art school. Whether or not that fueled his anger, who knows. Okay, he will serve for Germany in World War I. So he's kind of unrecognizable here because of his mustache. It's not what we know Hitler as far as his mustache. So he's going to serve for Germany, and he's very upset with the outcome of the war. He's upset with the fact that they lost, and he's upset with the fact of the Treaty of Versailles and all the reparations that they have to pay. And so what he's going to eventually try to do is to take over Germany in what we call a coup d'etat. So it's kind of like a takeover, what we call the Beer Hall Putsch. Okay? It was a gathering, and so Hitler is going to kind of try to get his allies, his supporters, to help try to lead this coup to take over Germany. Ultimately, it's going to fail. He's going to be arrested and he's going to be sentenced to 5 years in prison. And unfortunately, what we'll see happen is he is going to write one of the most well-known books published, and it's going to help fuel the hatred for the Jews. In prison, Hitler's going to write Mein Kampf, or My Struggles, and he's going to address the causes for Germany losing, ultimately blaming the Jews for the economic issues, for blaming the Jews for being traitors during the war. And that's just going to start to fuel the hatred in Germany. Eventually, he's going to become the leader of the Nazi Party. Okay, he's promoting racism, anti-big business, which a lot of Germans liked, okay, and hatred for the Treaty of Versailles. Eventually, once he takes over and rules the Nazi Party is like a political party. So we have Democrats and Republicans. The Nazi Party was a political party there. Eventually, he's going to run for president, and he'll tie and eventually be appointed chancellor. And just like what we saw with Stalin and we saw with Mussolini, his Nazi Party is going to help get rid of any opposition to him. And so he will become the president of Germany after the death of the person he had tied with. So the chancellor is kind of like the vice president. Once that president dies, he will now become the leader of Germany. Okay, and what we'll start to see once he becomes the sole leader, we'll see him put his plan from Mein Kampf into action to take out the Jewish population. Okay, a little bit more about that we'll talk about with Germany under Nazi rule and then eventually the Holocaust. Okay, Germany under Nazi rule, if we take a look, this is what we see as far as Germany, 1933 to 1945. We talked a little bit about this in our previous unit. Germany was chopped up. We see Poland established. We'll see Czechoslovakia, all as a result of the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, but what we will see, and you can see in this, that he's going to push his borders. He wants to expand Germany to eventually take over Poland and take back what was Czechoslovakia. And how does he do so? Okay, just like we talked about with Mussolini, we'll see a totalitarian state put in place. Total control of the public, of private life by the government. So think of Big Brother. They know what's going on. Okay, you don't know who to trust. You don't know who is going to rat you out for maybe speaking bad about Hitler. And so anything that they can control with a private or public life, they'll do so. Okay, so here we can see obviously some propaganda that Hitler's going to use. This is obviously in German. And what we see, the English translation, long live Germany. When we looked at Stalin propaganda, we talked about, hey, how you see Stalin in a prominent, strong role. We always saw the Soviet flag. So here, very similar to what we saw there, we see with Hitler. He's holding the Nazi flag. He looks like a very strong leader. Okay, he wants to return Germany to being a glorious, strong government. And so to help do so is he's going to have a minister of propaganda who's going to create propaganda to not only make him look very strong and powerful, but to also turn the Germans against the Jews. So Joseph Goebbels is going to be the minister of propaganda who's going to help in taking out the Jewish population. Once Hitler has become president, he will appoint himself the Führer, the sole leader of Germany in 1934. Okay, so we don't really have any other type of ruler who can also rule beside him. He is the sole leader. And so a very powerful speaker he was. Okay, so here this is not obviously quoting what he said, but an example, I believe in the Aryan race, I want more territory, give me Austria, give me Czechoslovakia, I won't take any more. And so what we'll see him do is annex and kind of take back Austria, which is down below in pink, and Czechoslovakia, taking part of that. Okay, but do you think he's just going to stop there? Is he going to stop with just this pink? And we can kind of see here within the orange, Germany 1943, he's not going to stop there. Okay, he's greedy, he wants land, he wants power. Okay, we'll also see him put into place in 1935 the Nuremberg laws. Okay, Nuremberg is a city, a town within Germany. And what this was laws for Jews. Okay, Jews could only marry Jews. You're considered Jewish if at least one grandparent was Jewish. You could not teach in German schools if you were Jewish. This chart over here on the right is showing you who could be considered a Jew, determining your heritage of if you're a Jew or not. And those are just the first steps. Okay, we'll see on November 9th through 10th, 1938, Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Jewish businesses will be targeted. They're going to loot them. They're going to burn synagogues, the holy place of worship for Jews. Their sole being, their Torah, their holy book, all going to be destroyed on this night. And so we start to see some steps put into place. Okay, we'll see in 1939, August 1939, the Nazi-Soviet Pact. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about this image in class. Stalin here is on the left, Hitler's on the right. Okay, but what we start to see is Hitler and Stalin will make an agreement that, hey, let's be friends. We don't want to fight each other. Let's instead focus our fighting on getting more land. Okay, so Hitler wants to avoid having another two-front war. So when we take a look back at this map here, if you remember during World War I, they had a fight on the left and they had a fight on the right. Hitler's smart enough to realize we don't want that. Okay? And so what he does is he becomes frenemies with Stalin and promises that the area of Poland and Eastern Europe, portion of it will be turned to Soviet hands, like you can see here, and the other portion will be given to Germany. Okay? Sounds great, right? On September 1st, 1939, Hitler's going to invade Poland. This is going to be the start of World War II. Invading another country is a declaration of war. And so Hitler gets greedy. He doesn't want to stop with Poland. He wants to now invade the Soviet Union and take back their land. Calls them some mean names and so forth. And so we're going to see this Nazi-Soviet pact fall apart. And Hitler's going to create one of his biggest enemies during World War II. You think he would have learned from previous experience with Germany. Okay, so that kind of wraps up a little bit of our Nazi Germany, but now we're going to hit on the Holocaust. Okay, a big pivotal part of World War II happens at the same time. Okay, so we're going to talk about how it began, continued, and came to an end. Okay, to begin with, Jews were being blamed for problems and blamed for the outcome of the war. Okay, they're going to be targeted. Okay, who is to blame for the war? Well, that's the Jews. And you can see with our image here with that little Star of David, that's going to be a big symbol for the Jews during the Holocaust. So they're blamed not only for causing financial issues after the war, but they're blamed for the war and for the outcome and the fact that they are considered traitors by the German people. And so as we see the Holocaust continue on, we're going to see death camps set up throughout Poland to get rid of the inferior race. Okay, some common ones that we saw are well-known ones: Auschwitz, Sobibor, Treblinka. Bergen-Belsen was a pretty well-known one, Buchenwald, Dachau. Okay, all well-known concentration camps, death camps that are set up by the Nazis to get rid of the Jews. Okay, other individuals will be targeted as well, but the main target was Jews. Some of the differences you can see: a death camp are the ones in red, where primarily they went there and they were killed immediately. Concentration camps were kind of very similar to labor camps, where they would work. And so here you can kind of see the classification of what they would wear on their prison-type uniforms. So Jews, Slavs, Gypsies, mentally ill, all of them had their own little symbol to identify who they were. What they determined as the Holocaust was starting out at the very beginning was shooting them or gassing them in vans was very costly. It was not smart on an economical type standpoint. And so this is where we'll start to see the creation of gas chambers to get rid of individuals very quickly at a very low price. One of the other issues that we're going to see is experimentation, especially with twins, because you have kind of your control group and then you have the twin that you can experiment on. And so Dr. Mengele, the angel of death, is going to be very well known during this time for experimenting on individuals, not only to figure out, hey, how can we, sew twins back together, but how can we help the Germans in war? And so they would submerge Jews in freezing temperatures to see how long it would take before they would get hypothermia. They would give them medication. They would try to amputate limbs, or they would cut into limbs to try to see if they could find an antibiotic that would help treat it. So cruel, inhumane experiments on prisoners, especially Jews, were done by the angel of death. And there's a story with him that he will escape being prosecuted and will get into Brazil. And so you can look a little bit more up into him as well. Okay. Ultimately, the end of the Holocaust we'll see with the final solution. When the Allied powers are starting to close in on Nazi Germany and they start to realize that, hey, they're getting closer, we need to get rid of these individuals quicker, we started to not only see them being gassed, but we also started to see death marches where they would try to take the prisoners and move them further into and closer to Germany. And a lot of times these individuals were walking in winter, -degree temperatures, no shoes, very little clothing, no food, and so a lot of individuals will die within these death marches. Overall, the estimate is about 6 million Jews will be murdered through the Holocaust. Many camps were destroyed to hide any evidence of wrongdoing, but when Allied forces did start to get closer and did discover these camps and start to liberate them, the true story of the Holocaust will start to come out. And that's why we start to see things put in place like the Holocaust Museum, where you can go and visit and learn about what happened, as well as some other projects that are done to help ensure that even though a lot of these victims that did survive, they're getting older and they're starting to die out. What we'll see come out of World War II and the Holocaust deals with the Geneva Convention. And the Geneva Convention was established well before World War II to set rules for humanitarian treatment, to protect individuals, prisoners of war, and ensure that they have humane treatment during the war. And obviously the Nazis are going to violate that greatly, and so after the war and after the Holocaust, they will have to update the Geneva Convention to ensure that treatment like what we saw with Jews and even POWs does not happen again. the final thing that we'll end up seeing is the Nuremberg trials. So remember, we had the Nuremberg laws, so what better place to hold the trials for these Nazi officials, doctors, judges, anybody really associated with wrongdoing than in the town of Nuremberg, where it all kind of started with the Nuremberg laws. So here you can see an image over here, some Nazi officials that are going to be tried. Some will be convicted, many will commit suicide, some will escape Germany before trial will actually happen. And there's still things out in the news today of 90-year-old Germans who are arrested and convicted for crimes they committed back during World War II. Okay, so that kind of wraps up our middle unit with World War II, how we see Mussolini, Hitler, Nazi Germany, and then also the Holocaust.